Welcome to today's session. In order to really set the stage for what our partnership looks like with Microsoft, it's important to have a little context around how Nutanix has evolved over the last 10 plus years. So starting with customers and their need to have infrastructure in their data center, we initially came to market with this idea of what's called hyper-converged infrastructure. If you'll recall, back in the 2010 to 2012 timeframe, companies had what was often referred to as a three-tier architecture, and they had really done a great job dialing in both performance, reliability, and cost as it related to the infrastructure services that their business needed, hosted in a data center or co-location facility. And as is often the case with a compelling piece of technology that sounds good on paper, they needed to de-risk the idea of trying to adopt something like hyper-converged infrastructure. So they gave us one of the more difficult workloads that they were contending with at the time. And again, if you go back in your mind to this time frame, virtual desktop infrastructure was great in concept, but very hard to deliver at scale. The technology options at that time really had some limitations around performance and reliability. And so that's what we were able to kind of cut our teeth on in the customer's environment. And so from a data center perspective, we were able to absolutely do a tremendous job supporting virtual desktops at scale for businesses. And since that time, we've scaled to the point that today we have customers running thousands of nodes in their data center, wall-to-wall Nutanix with every mission-critical application that their business relies on running on our software platform. So it's been quite a journey, to say the least. But in addition to that, there was another emerging challenge that companies were dealing with back in that 2010 to 12 timeframe, which was the rapidly growing need for reliable infrastructure services outside the data center. Now, the need to have some level of infrastructure outside the data center is seemingly always been there. But during this period, the demand for this really began to increase very quickly. And so what once was, a Windows XP laptop with an external USB drive connected to it, maybe shoved off into a closet, maybe never to be thought about again, was quickly shifting to questions like, should we drop a small SAN environment into this location to support this data that we're starting to generate at these locations? And of course, it wasn't just one location. For many businesses, it was many. This could be a store locations, this could be rig sites, this could be really any number of things that were outside the data center that a company ran, but was also needing these infrastructure services. And if you think about what really is important when you think about this need for infrastructure services in the data center as well as outside the data center, is the perfect state would be to have a common set of tools that a company can leverage to deliver all of these services at scale. So one set of API calls, one set of CLI commands, and one approach to the lifecycle management. And that's exactly what Nutanix was able to deliver. Out on the edge, we were able to create what we refer to commonly as a one-click experience for customers to really provide a consistent approach to infrastructure services, whether it be in the data center or outside the data center. Everything from our software to the hypervisor to the actual physical hardware BIOS, we've really refined a way for customers to manage that in a very simple and straightforward way. And bringing us to present day, we're now approaching that same concept, but bringing our software to Azure. And so the first thought that a company might think when they think about this idea of running the Nutanix software on Azure is, why would I want to run our software on something that is already, they manage from a cost perspective very carefully, right? It seems like it might be a net add from a cost perspective, and so I'm not sure if I really want to entertain that. And so I want to spend the balance of the time kind of unpacking what it means to run the Nutanix software platform on Azure, so that you understand really what it is we're doing and the value that it brings as a result of that. So today, an organization that's adopted the Azure platform as part of their IT operations, the first thing they're going to do is figure out a way to operationally approach some of the services that are running there. The three most common would be things like Azure VMs, their blob storage, as well as Azure SQL, just to give an example. Great services, a number of reasons why a company would want to adopt that, and you clearly see that happening at scale. But there's a lesser known service that runs on Azure that most companies don't often stop and think about, and that is their bare metal as a service. And it's right at that place, if I can call it that the Nutanix software platform runs. So rather than this being something that's added to the cost profile of what you're doing in Azure, in some respects it displaces some of those services. Essentially, what might traditionally be done on Azure natively, some of those infrastructure services then get provided by Nutanix on Azure. So what is our software, right? At the most simplest explanation, we're made up of, or we comprise, two components. We have a control plane and we have a data plane. Now this data plane we refer to as AOS, and the control plane we call Prism. Now from a data plane perspective, we do some really compelling things, right? So not only do we give our customers the ability to land the data once and have that one set of tools, that one set of operational processes that they need to manage that data, but we also give them the ability to serve up that data in any number of protocols that they might need for their application ecosystem. So whether it be NFS or SMB shares, maybe it's an S3 object store, or even persistent storage for containers, we give our customers the ability to land it once, serve it up in a multi-protocol environment, and whether it be virtual machines or containers, as your environment continues to evolve and kind of shape shift over time, we give you the ability to flex in whatever direction you need to go from a data management perspective. So as VMs are being converted to containers, you just shape shift the storage requirements for those over time without having to upend or migrate the data itself. Now, from a control plane perspective, we do a lot of the things that you would expect to see in a control plane. We give our customers the ability to monitor the resources, to report against them there, even things like provide self-service capabilities to some population of users in the environment. But one other really compelling thing that we do from a control plane perspective is we have an embedded automation engine that lives natively to our platform. Now, when it comes to automation, we view this in two distinct different ways. The first one is the automation of the operational tasks that need to go into managing infrastructure like this. So imagine an if this then that type functionality around all the various things that need to go into the management and support of an IaaS platform. The idea of moving away from being reactionary and into being as proactive as possible through a high degree of automation around the operational task. The second way in which we approach automation on our platform is really more externally focused. So how an application gets deployed, managed over time, revised as new revisions come out, as well as integrate or work within a larger ecosystem of services is the other key component to our automation engine. So, how that application not only gets laid out, but then interacts with these other third-party services, or in this case, native Azure services, is core to what we're doing from an automation perspective on our platform. Now, imagine a world where our software then sits at one, if not all, of these various different locations. When you achieve that point, then you actually arrive at this state of having one set of tools, one set of API calls, one set of CLI commands, and one approach to lifecycle management across this vast scale of requirements from an infrastructure services perspective. And that is what we refer to as the Nutanix Cloud Platform. Now, From a use case perspective, while there are many, there's three general thought processes I think that most companies look at when they consider running the Nutanix software platform on Azure. The first one is the ability to accelerate the migration of workloads to Azure. So whether it's a data center exit, in some cases companies have strategy in place where they're going to exit one or more data centers, then we become a tremendous accelerant to help them do that in a quick and timely manner. If lift and shift is going to be the way that you evacuate that data center, we hold to the thought that we are one of the fastest options that a company has to do that reliably and consistently at scale. It may only be a portion of the applications in your data center that you've decided you want to move directly to Azure. Again, that same concept exists where we're going to provide a very straightforward and efficient way to relocate those applications without having to refactor them. Now, a second use case that we see customers doing is more in the vein of a hybrid cloud operation, where they still have every intention to continue to run certain applications in their data center, but there's benefits to the elasticity of the cloud that they want to capitalize on and almost complement what they're doing from a private cloud perspective. One great use case for that scenario is the idea of being able to use flex capacity over certain periods of time in the year where you need more infrastructure resources than maybe what you have in your private cloud. So this idea of being able to create a cluster instance in Azure, hibernate that cluster, it's built out exactly to your specifications, but you essentially hibernate it, only then to resume operations when these peaks occur over the course of your fiscal year. It's a great use case. It's a way to manage cost and at the same time not have to move too slowly when it comes to the volatile demands at times that a business has to contend with. And then the third use case, I think, is probably one of the most intuitive, which is the idea of just leveraging Azure as your DR or as a part of your DR strategy. So in this scenario, instead of buying with capital dollars a set of assets that are going to sit in a location in the event of, right, in the case of a disaster, and your team managing all of that secondary infrastructure over time, why not leverage Azure as your target for all things DR? And we bring to bear, again, with cost optimization in mind, this idea of a pilot light where you can replicate all of the data that you need in the event of a disaster to Nutanix on Azure. But then once you invoke a disaster event, you can scale out the compute to make sure that you can run your environment seamlessly. And then, of course, once you fail back, you can scale that back down. So again, the number of use cases are many, but I think these are three really good thoughts that we see customers using for the Nutanix platform on Azure. Now, understanding that most organizations that have partnered with Microsoft and are leveraging the Azure platform, there's a certain number of benefits that they've become accustomed to that it's important to know you do not lose when you adopt the Nutanix platform on Azure. Things like the ability to source our software through the marketplace. That's something that every company is able to do. You also have the ability to exercise all of the benefits that come with the Azure Hybrid Benefit Program. So whether it be Windows or SQL licensing, all of those benefits apply when you migrate those to in-situ or the Nutanix cloud clusters on Azure. Another great benefit is as you engage in a MAC agreement with Microsoft, both that bare metal as a service and our software are able to be applied against that MAC. So it helps organizations meet the commitments that they've made to Microsoft, as well as the extended security updates that Microsoft makes available when someone migrates a workload to the Azure platform. All of that goodness still applies even when it's running on the Nutanix software platform in Azure. So really, really strong partnership here. We work tirelessly to make sure that we're delivering value to our customers in the strength of this partnership between Nutanix and Microsoft. And then there's what's coming, right? So as I mentioned, the world is your oyster, so to speak, in terms of the number of different native Azure services that you can run in conjunction with NC2 on Azure. But one of the near-term options that we're making available to our customers is the ability to incorporate Elastic SAN into what we're doing from a cluster perspective. So imagine the ability to independently scale the storage of any given cluster by simply turning on or invoking the Elastic SAN service on Azure to give you what you need from a capacity perspective. We're really excited about this feature. We're not too far off from it being available. And of course, from there, we have a robust roadmap of additional ways that we're going to continue to integrate natively with the different services that are running on the Azure platform. So I hope that gives you a better insight into how this partnership between Nutanix and Microsoft is working, how our software interacts with the Azure platform, and some of the benefits that a company could potentially take advantage of in a strategy that leverages Nutanix as part of their Azure first direction that they're going in. I want to thank you very much for your time and attention today. If any of this has prompted some additional questions or comments, things you'd like to dig a little deeper into, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Global NC2 Sales Specialist Team at Nutanix.com.